Well, hello, welcome to this show. I have some other ones for dealing with special problems when we were running network cable in an old structure. But before we get to those, because they tend to be kind of long, and before really you can appreciate that, let's start at the ultra basics for people who may not have had old men and grandpas in their life that did this kind of stuff. So let's start with that as we roll title. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about making holes. And in a wood structure, because there are also concrete, insulated concrete form type structures, basements, things like that. We're going to talk about stick-built wood frame construction right here and installing in that. One of the reasons, of course, if you've ever heard me through the real estate stuff, talk about how much I think that the closed cell foam is just a disaster. It's like, to me, it's the new drive it or stucco or whatever. It's a problem. And some people like it. And of course they feel also superior because it's foamed in, but it makes it impossible just about to get in the walls and deal with that. Even with fiber, it can be difficult to get in there, but at least you can. So we're talking about mainly working with inside walls or under floors or in attics that we have access to. And one of the things you'll need are augers, wood bits. Right now, these are augers. Turn them sideways. They are cheap augers. They came from Harbor Freight, and I use them. They work good enough. I used to buy better ones back when I was doing residential work, and then I'd always bust them. They'd get dull, so I didn't have anything cheaper, so I didn't use it. All right, now take a look at this. Now I don't know if you can see this. Let's hold it up there. See how that end? It's got a little tip. Screws in, increasing diameter because it wants to pull out. You'll notice it's got like a little chipping edge here. Some of the better ones that used to cost quite a bit more would have another little edge right here. And what it would do is this first one would chip out of the bottom, and then the one on the side would help take it out of the hole. Well, you might need tall ones or short ones for runs or whatever, and they come in different lengths. This is a fairly cheap set. I could buy 3 of these together for 1 or 2 times down. What we call job tools. They're bought just for the one job and they're left over rather than throw them away. Because we will need to come through either a stud if it's like this or a plate, double up. Usually there's 2 of these because you put each wall will have one in the very top that overlaps the corners. And you'll need to put a hole through there. And you'll need to put a hole through there to take your wires, and you really don't need a bigger hole than you need to get what wires go through it. And you say, well, Del, why wouldn't I just want a big hole instead of a small hole so that way I don't have any trouble? Well, there's some truth to that. The biggest thing is, in the good old days, these dudes these kind of auger bits were very expensive. And they are great about breaking and dulling when you hit a nail because the top of the wall plate is like this. And of course, then you have a wall set on top of subflooring on the bottom and that kind of thing. And so it's pretty easy to hit a nail. And if you hit a nail, you tend to break your augers. So why use a bigger one than you need to? Plus, if you're being inspected, depending on who your inspector is, the new codes do require you to plug up all the holes. Energy codes, if nothing else. If they're big enough, if they're more than 1/4 inch, a mouse can get through there. If it's bigger than that, rats can get through it. You don't want to deal with that. So use you a bit big enough to go through here, and if you don't make them any bigger than you need, then you don't have to worry so much about plugging them up, and they work. And hey, if you're forced to plug a hole up, that'll be the one you need to get back through in the future. So that's just one of those things. Now, when we talk about getting through the walls and not hitting nails and things, there's because the wall is already built, and most time we're drilling blind. Now, in new construction, residential, we have a lot of these, and because we're very thoughtful and inventive, we call this a nail-on box. It's a single gang nail-on box because it has nails. Now, there are other old work boxes, including some screw-in boxes. Let me go get one of those. All right, now this is one of the many things I've invented over my life and didn't do a darn thing with it. So somebody else also actually took it to market and got the money out of it. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And it reminds me when Dad was talking to me one time, I said, hey, I had an idea. Brand new. I had come by it all by myself. And then he informed me that it had already been thought of years ago. And it's like, how can that be? He said, well, son, just because you have an idea that you came to yourself doesn't mean you're the first one to ever do that. You know, so anyway, this is a screw-on box, old work box. Now, these are new in our way. What is that little red light coming from? There we go. Anyway, it screws in, if you can see, right here to the edge. And we used to do for 20, 30 years before I ever saw one of these in real life. We used to take, if we needed to get old work box in there, we had a hole, or maybe we had like tile or something around it we couldn't get back in there, and we didn't want to have the ears on the front, we would take a nail-on box, which is, by the way, not allowed by code to do what I'm fixing to tell you, so don't you do it. We'd cut the nail part off, then we have just a box that fits right in that hole, works well, and then we'd drill some holes in there and put some little drywall screws in. And it worked great until inspectors started failing it. And so eventually that probably was the motivation between making one of these. Now this thing's about $4 or $5. Of course it's multi-gang, that's 3 gangs versus one of those. But it would solve the problem of having to use what we call an old work box. Now these have these little ears, and I covered this in one of the videos because I'm having to cut a nail-on box out to see if I can fish wire through that existing spot. Now it was in a location that had a box there. And so when they built the house, they used these. These are cheaper than an old work ring, and they don't normally let you use old work devices in new constructions because that's not what they're intended for. But anyway, here's just a little box. It's got little ears, no big deal. What you do is you cut a hole that's not as big as the little ears are. See how I'll put it in profile. See the little profile? And then when you screw it down, the ears pop up and it pinches it. The box literally hangs on the wall material. So here what we have is not a box, but a ring, and you can use this for telephone, Ethernet, TV cable, stuff that is class 2, power limited. It's not power conducting. It's not taking energy with it, like it's not coming off the mains. It's not coming off your breaker. And it's just like the box, except it's just the front of the box. It's just the frame. Does the same thing. And these can be nice after you get your construction done. These are more expensive than a nail-on box. Generally speaking, these are about $250 right now. Something like this is about $450 or $750. Because it's 3 gang, it may be $10. I don't remember. Just have some left over. So that's kind of how we get into it. And I've got a video, and to keep it short, this one's shorter from that one, I'm going to explain a little bit about using a flexible bit, which is what's in this right here is a flexible bit. And it's got a very narrow shaft, all of the length of it except for the head, which is an auger. So like the first ones we saw with the yellow, it's got that kind of drill bit on the front of it, but it's got a long, flexible shaft. Now, how do you get stuff in there? Well, I would highly recommend, because it was years before I found one of these, because these things used to be extraordinarily expensive. This is not a fish tape. You'll see this in other videos. This is just a fishing rod, fishing stick, whatever you might want to call it. And these are inexpensive. Also, if you buy from Harbor Freight, if you buy from Lowe's and you buy like a Klein brand or whatever, you're going to pay through the nose for it. But it'll be good stuff. Now, it's just a little thin fiberglass rod, nothing special, and they screw in. Now, the problem with these that are less than $10 currently at a Harbor Freight is when you put them in a real bind, these ends can break off. And I've got a few that are broken, and I intend to go back and buy another one of these and then just add all my sticks together. This is 33 feet of rigid rod, semi-rigid rod that will work well for poking in, and you can use it. And I may have a segment in this video showing that. But like, if we can return back to our hole, if you'll notice, this one is crooked because this one was just a piece of wood I drilled out on the trailer, and it's not perfectly straight. When you have a very long auger, like we just showed you, those 18 inches, if you're going through the interstitial place, the space in between there, between the bottom and the top plate of the wall, in my case, it's 12 inches. I got 12-inch eyes in there. And then I had to get through 3 inches of having the top plates because they're doubled up. They're good about, with those long ones, if you have the vertical reach to go straight down, you can get a good straight center of the top all the way through to the next plate, and you don't have the wandering off that gets you going through a ceiling or whatever, provided there's a wall under there. So we pull those together. Now like I think I've already mentioned, I don't see a point in making a much bigger hole than you need to pull your wire, not only because something could potentially crawl through there, but because you're increasing the odds you're going to hit a nail in that double plate. Now here we have some wire. This is the old stuff. I've showed you a video on this already. This is the riser wire, the CMR, and the jacket is extra thick. And compare it to this 5, it's just a smaller diameter. So when I initially did my planning for bringing it in where the network video recorder and the Ethernet, all that stuff is, I had figured out I would have a 4-gang spot with 6 keystones in each one. We'll do a video on fun with keystones, but I was going to end up having 4 holes with 6 wires in each one. And when we combine the typical size wire, 6 of them, I bundled them together and they would easily fit through that hole. So that's the auger I drilled everything out with. Only to find out that when I brought my wire in, because I didn't think of it, I got the CMR, this riser wire here, which has got an extra heavy jacket, which is good for protecting my pairs inside. But it was a bigger diameter, and 6 of these puppies wouldn't fit through the hole, so I had to go in there with a hole saw and spend extra time opening it up. So there could be an argument for being a little bit bigger, but again, you just weigh whether or not you want to break a tool or dull a tool versus getting your wire through there. And you don't want something big enough where mice crawl in your wire and you hear them scurrying around, then you worry about they're going to eat your wire and your house burn down, that kind of stuff. So I think that's all of that little bit we'll talk about. I'm going to show you a little bit till I get a video that looks like it's not going to be too long, and then we'll break the other stuff into those other videos, because there is something in there where I show you bringing those 4 lines in, those 4 sets of 6 for the power over Ethernet security system. There is a structural something about the wall space where my hands are, assuming my hands are like studs, and this is just a very narrow space. We have a space so big, and I want to come directly in between that where I mount my box, or my box, or my ring. I'm using a 4-gang ring at that point. I can get that perfectly, but unfortunately, over where the box is more or less centered, there's something structurally sitting, holding a bit of the roof up, and I don't want to knock out that little cripple that's holding the roof rafters up, giving it a little extra support, because it's a very long diagonal run and we support it in different places. I don't want to cut that out, so I actually come at an angle, and you'll see in the video, you'll see the little fishing rods are shot at angle. For that purpose, knowing that they weren't going to line up right, I actually drilled those holes at an angle. Because if you're having to fish wires through a little box hole, something maybe this big or bigger, maybe a little smaller, you pretty well much want to get your wire to naturally follow to that direction if you can. If it looks like it's going to be a little bit of a problem, that's what the fishing rods are for, because you can send them through. Even if you can't, you can normally twist them a little bit if your hole's not too small. So there we go. If you like this content, please go to calldeltosell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you. Thank you. Twist them a little bit if your hole's not too small. So there we go. Well, I'll show you this much. We have where we pulled our existing cables through for the Ethernet. We now have 5 holes up here. We had to put them on the angle of a dangle to avoid getting, go in here, speaker cable that's right up against the stud that we've located with a stud sensor. And of course there is the edge of the vapor barrier, so we are right at the stud, and that also puts us in a position where we're not too far off of our shelf that we expanded. We had to get a new shelf here for the NVR. So we have on this side, that's the other stud. Before we cut a hole, we have to go up top and look and make sure we're okay. Right there, and about that space, there's a receptacle on the other side in the meat room. And of course, there's the other end of the speaker on that side. And there's the old speaker wire on that side. We're not using either one of them, but we could if we wanted. And there's our little vacuum where we've been cleaning up our chips because we don't want to leave a mess up there. It's actually required by code. We have our air filter going. That's that receptacle I told you about. It's actually double or 2 gain double receptacle. Now when we get up top, we're just right here at the edge. This is our known thing that we know about. Here's our cellular repeater on that side. Goes to that antenna right there. That gets us to the tower. And right down that area is the existing Ethernet, so we can measure over. And of course, as you see there, we already had the speaker wires going down, so we had to step to the side. That's why we're at an angle. We got one big hole to get a HDMI cable down so that we can pull in the future a monitor down above the TV so we can watch it down there. We use a splitter up here where we use the mouse, but that way we can just run it downstairs. Now we got our 4 holes, one for each gang, and we're set. And that's pretty much it. And the rest of it is just having a healthy lad pull our wires to the other corners of our house. That way and that way. It's not all that difficult. You just got to be able to physically move. Well, we got it pulled. Now, before we go any further, look at this pitiful looking grandpa shoe. It's already been glued back together with some headliner glue, and the toes breaking out. It's what you have to do when you're old and on a fixed income. So here we go. We've got our black, white, and blue. I would have preferred red, but red wasn't in stock. You know, America. So we know that we've got our down spot right here, and I want 3 feet on the other side of that. So I'll measure 3 feet of cable. But let's take a look just on that one short little run, what distance it was. According to this, we're at 448 feet. That means, obviously, we pulled about 50 feet to that area. Now we're going to pull another run, because we're going to go down to the garage with a white for the TV spot down there, so in case we stream or whatever, we'll have internet down there. And we'll have black for the far part of that room. We're adding another one there, and we'll have to pull a telephone wire with it. Now I happen to have some old 4-wire 2-pair, which is black, yellow, red, green for line 2, line 1, and we'll pull it beside it because it's small, and our options to get into our phone box, which is covered on both sides of the wall, going to be a little tight. Well, time-wise, we're not doing too bad. So let's talk a little bit about wire, because I want to get to it. And I know you've seen the Cat 6s and Cat 5s I showed you. They're all 4-pair. But what I used was some of this that I was throwing away but hadn't made it to the dump yet. It had been despooled on a elbow. But anyway, we have some of this is brown wire. Now this is a little different. This is old-fashioned. Let me see if I can make this work. See, it's 2-pair. It is black and yellow and red and green. And what it is red and green is ring and tip, and then black and yellow is line 2. And where does that come from? If we had some old timers around that we could talk to, they might stop it. Old timers. I'm not an old timer. I'm just older than you, perhaps. Maybe not all of you, but yes, in the old days, telephones were DC. And the phone jack we used to have, because the operators used to have to go like from one phone system to another phone system. They had to be manually plugged in a certain number of limited lines that went between phone companies to phone companies. In fact, who remembers Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In? I said don't start with that old people stuff. But there was a character of the telephone operator who was always given, smart aleck. But anyway, the ring and the tip was, because they were DC phone systems, the tip is just like what you might expect to see here, the tip of the phone jack, and the ring was the shaft. Now this is stereo, and so we've actually got 2 tips, but since you can only have 1 tip per se, the very first ring that's isolated is another channel, and then the common between them. So we had this, if it'll hold up, red, green, right? 2 pairs, red and green, yellow and black, or black and yellow. How yellow and black is, I think, the order they come in. But we have this type. This is an RJ11. Let's see if I can get that to hold up there. There you go. Now, what do you see there? You see red and green. Only 2 wires because that's all you needed for line 1 of a telephone. Which brings me to something I saw today. I was on my phone drinking my early morning caffeine, and I saw something that was being pushed. Look at this. Intelligent Brit used an old telephone system to get gigabit internet. And it's like, oh, look, isn't he smart? And I'm like, it was Tom's Hardware, I think it was. It was just something pushed on me. I didn't ask for it. And I'm like, no, that's not interesting. That's not even inventive. Because what do we have when let me go back to this, let's look at Cat 3. I had this roll of Cat 3. Let me see if I can get the words to show up. All right, what do we know about from that? We know it was made in March of 07. It's made by Carroll Company. It's certified at CMR. If we pull it right there toward the end, it's CMR, so we know it's riser cable. And it says it's Cat 3, which means it's going to be 2 pair. And we see, look at that foot marker on it. It is, I don't even know if I can read a number that big, but it says there are 89, 53, 50 feet. They're not doing this cute stuff that we've come to know and love where we can check how much is left on our spool, because apparently this 1,000-foot box I had left over up behind the other stuff, which this is not CMR. This is not, while this also is Carroll cable, you notice it's CMX. It's not. This is exterior, outdoor, not necessarily riser, although it is rated for CMR as well. But see, it's CMX. And if we rotate its little footage up here, this is newer wire by here. Somewhere on there, it will tell us that it has a very similar 6-digit footage mark. So it becomes very hard. It can be more difficult to know how much you have left in your box or on your spool, because they're not giving us the good countdown. Now, from that, you would have to, when you first pulled your first bit out, you'd mark on the box the date, not necessarily the time, but the date and what was the foot marker. And then you do your work. And when you were finished, you'd mark down the end dates, which would be your start date for next time, and what it said. Whether it's counting up or counting down makes no difference. You're just looking for the difference. But I will point something out here on the Cat 3. What do we have here? We have our blue pair and orange pair, just like we would expect. Well, what do we use in Ethernet? Well, it may surprise you. We only needed 2 wires, 1 pair for a telephone. If you had line 2, you'd have 2 pair. How many do we need out of our 8 wires that we put in our RJ45? All right, that's at the bottom of the screen. But as you can see, we're using the orange pair to the left, and we're splitting a pair around the center, which was the blue and white. So we only use 2 pair for Ethernet. Gigabit, 10 gigabit, doesn't make any difference. It's 2 pair. We have a transmit channel and a receive channel on a full duplex. So anyway, it wasn't that big of a deal to me, but I thought I'd slip this in there. I think I can cut enough of the fiddling around so it won't be that long, but you get the idea. Had I known I actually had most of 1,000 feet of Cat 3, I would have used it, because I can keep my blue and white, my orange and white. My pairs would look like the telephone. I wouldn't have to do the translation between red, green, yellow, black. Now time for a check-in. What we've done, we've completed all of the wire pulling of the Cat cable. And we're going to do something similar to this system right there, where we use the keystone type of plates, the little decor type plates. So we're going to make those up and get them going. We do have video going from here to downstairs so that it can share the video output from the security system if we put in a what do you call that, power over Ethernet system. Well, I know this is a bit of a grandpa video here, showing you a little bitty different things, not really all that much about overcoming some of the obstacles, but we'll do that with another video because it's long too, and I really have to describe it because I didn't take immaculate video camera pictures of the the endoscope going through there, because when you're fighting to get a job done, the last thing you want to do is actually have to film it. So we talk about that, but I do explain to you so that you really get a good understanding of why we don't want to come through the ceiling and why we do what we do. All right, we appreciate you. Remember, if you can, buy some coffee. It always helps, and you get something for it. Yeah, it's not free, but because it's getting roasted literally from me for you, I have to go in there, heat the unit up, print up the labels, and do the boxes and stuff while the thing's preheating. Then I got to do the roasting. Then I got to bag them. Then I got to so it's done. There's a lot of labor to it. There's really no. There's more love and very little money in it, if at all. So if you can, buy some coffee. Because I don't monetize these things. If you see commercials, they're not mine. I'm not selling any ad time on these things. See ya on another video.